Imagine telling Spider-Man fans 10 years ago that one day people would seriously ask, is Miles Morales actually better than Peter Parker? Most fans would have laughed because for decades, Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Not a Spider-Man, the Spider-Man. But now, everything has changed because somehow Miles Morales went from the new kid to possibly becoming the future of the entire Spider Man brand. And honestly, this debate gets way more emotional than patience. And maybe the biggest question of all, can anyone ever truly replace Peter Parker? To understand why this debate is so intense, you have to understand what Peter Parker meant to people. Spider Man changed superheroes forever. Before Peter Parker, most heroes felt perfect, untouchable. Then suddenly Marvel introduced this awkward teenager from Queens who struggled with money, got bullied, missed deadlines, failed relationships, constantly doubted himself, and people saw themselves in him. That's why Peter became iconic. Not because he was powerful, because he felt human. Even today, Peter Parker might still be the most relatable superhero ever created. And honestly, that's hard to beat. But here's the problem. Marvel spent decades putting Peter through endless suffering. At some point, fans started asking, can Spider-Man ever grow up? And that question opened the door for Miles Morales. This is where things get controversial. A lot of fans feel Peter Parker has been stuck in a loop for years. Think about it. Broke again, relationship problems again, life falling apart again, relearning responsibility again, over and over. Some people love that because struggle is Spider-Man, but others think Peter's story started feeling repetitive, and that's exactly why Miles felt refreshing. Because Miles wasn't carrying decades of baggage. He still felt new, he still felt like a character discovering himself, and audiences connected with that energy immediately, especially younger fans. Then came Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse. And honestly, that movie changed the conversation forever. Because suddenly Miles Morales wasn't just another Spider-Man, he became iconic. The animation was insane, the music was perfect, the emotion hit hard. But the real reason Spider-Verse worked was identity. Miles wasn't trying to become. Miles feels fresh. Peter Parker feels classic. And for younger audiences, classic sometimes loses to fresh. That's dangerous for Peter fans because culturally, Miles is exploding right now, especially online. Now, before Peter fans celebrate, there's another side to this. Miles still doesn't have Peter Parker's history, and honestly, that matters more than people think. Peter Parker has decades of legendary stories, iconic villains, unforgettable emotional moments, some of the greatest comic arcs ever made. Miles simply hasn't existed long enough to build that level of story after story, generation after generation. That kind of emotional history is almost impossibilities. Miles also has Venom Blasts, invisibility, newer terrifying because Peter would constantly need to adapt. But then again, Peter Parker has survived fights against symbiotes, super geniuses, assassins, multiversal threats. Experience matters a lot, and Peter's battle IQ is absurd. So who wins? Honestly, that depends on the version, and that uncertainty is exactly why people love this debate. Here's the real difference. Peter Parker's story is about responsibility. Miles Morales' story is about identity. Peter constantly asks, how much pain can one person endure? Miles asks, who am I supposed to become? Those are very different emotional journeys. And depending on where you are in life, one character may hit harder than the other. Older fans often connect more with Peter's exhaustion and sacrifice. Younger fans connect with Miles trying to discover himself. Neither side is wrong. That's why this debate never ends. Now, this is where fans start arguing because some people believe Marvel is slowly positioning Miles Morales as the future face of Spider-Man. And honestly, there's evidence. Look at Spider-Verse success, gaming popularity, merchandise, younger audience appeal. Miles is becoming massive. But here's the interesting part. Marvel usually avoids fully replacing Peter Parker. Why? If we're talking about Standard comic versions. Serious fight, both trying to win. Peter Parker probably wins around 6 to 7 out of 10 times, but Miles Morales, absolutely. But Peter's is usually portrayed as sharper and more refined. Peter relies on instinct constantly, and because he's fought for years, his reactions become almost automatic. That's a huge advantage. People underestimate how smart Peter Parker is in combat. Peter constantly improvises, studies opponents mid-fight, manipulates environments, uses webs creatively. He fights like someone who's survived impossible situations for years. Now, here's the scary part. Miles has abilities Peter doesn't. These can seriously damage or stun Peter. That changes the fight completely. Miles fights more unpredictably and aggressively, and physically, Miles is no joke. Peter fights smarter, Miles fights harder. Peter feels calculated, Miles feels explosive. That's why this matchup is so interesting. Miles is very dangerous, especially because Peter may underestimate him emotionally. Peter usually adapts, and once Peter fully understands Miles's powers, his experience starts taking over. Peter Parker wins most fights, but Miles Morales is probably the only younger Spider-Man